Good Friday morning, everybody. This is our last Friday morning video. Let's celebrate. This is our very last one. You've made it through a whole year of online academy. It's been a wonderful pleasure doing this with you. I never ever thought I would ever do this sort of teaching, and I'm glad I got to do it with you all. You've made this year very special. This has been a very good learning experience for me, and who knows where the academy and online teaching will take us in the future. But we do know that next year you guys will all be back within the classroom and taking some of these skills you've learned this year to help you do very well at Dempsey Middle School next year. So it's been a wonderful year, and I want to thank everyone here for putting up with me for this year online and as watching as me grow and learn how to do this. And I know you guys all have grown so much and changed so much. It's been a wonderful experience watching everyone and seeing everyone learn and show their growth. So great job this year. Alrighty, well, this takes us to one of our final readings of the year. So let's go ahead and show you guys. We've made it all the way to the bottom of this list. Isn't that crazy? So let's read the very last one since we're pretty good here. What is that? Discovering a new species. One of my daughter's favorite word is, what's that? What's that? What's that? She's always wondering, what is that? So, let's find out, what is that? Discovering a new species. What is that? Well, it's a blank page. Introduction. How many different kinds of plants and animals are there in the world? 1,000 to 10,000? Guess again, scientists have identified about 2 million different species of plants and animals. Scientists believe there could be as many as 20 million more species that they don't know about. Some scientists are trying to find these species. They're used underwater. They use underwater cameras, helicopters, satellite mapping to help them. But sometimes scientists find a new plant or animal by accident. Find out how scientists discover a chameleon, a flower, and a bee in surprising ways. So you can see these are scientists here. These scientists are collecting marine animals to study. What is a species? A species is a type of plant animal. There are more than 40 species of deer, for example, and nearly 3,000 species of snakes. Sorry, that's my best Snape impression I could do. And for those that know, you know who Snape is. The snake that lost its lunch. The man who found a chameleon. Andy Marshall, a conservation scientist, wasn't looking for a new species as he walked the jungle in Tanzania, a country in Africa. He was always doing his job, protecting forests and the animals who lived there. In fact, this is a trip Andy was counting. On this trip, Andy was counting monkeys. So you can see this is the continent of Africa. Within the continent of Africa, there's the country Tanzania. One day, I really hope to go there. I kind of have it planned when Eleanor turns 18, she graduates high school. I'd like to take her to Tanzania and hike a mountain called Mount Kilimanjaro. That's kind of like my pie in the sky goal. So I'll encourage you guys, everyone, like I do every week, is go out, travel, check out the world, see what's out there. I know that Rose went out just recently to Massachusetts. I think it's a wonderful learning experience, and she was able to share that with us this week. So thanks again, Rose, and your dad, Mr. Sterling, for giving us that presentation that he gave. So thanks again. Whoa, snakes. Andy was walking very quietly. He didn't want the monkeys to hear him. Suddenly, he noticed something moving on the path ahead of him. Andy bent down for a closer look and saw a snake in the middle eating its lunch. And Andy wasn't afraid, but the snake was. It spit out its lunch and quickly slithered away. Andy wasn't, some people would have kept walking. Not Andy. He wanted to see what the snake spit out. He bent down and looked at it. He was amazed at what he saw. It was a chameleon, a special type of lizard that was unlike any chameleon his ever seen before. So what is look at this blue part down here. When a twig snake spits out its meal, Andy found a new kind of chameleon. So it's the snake, and it spit out the meal. So obviously it's a drawing. What color is a chameleon? Well, a chameleon is a type of lizard that can change its colors. Its colors show other chameleons how it's feeling. If a chameleon is relaxed, it may turn green. If a chameleon is angry, it may turn yellow. Air temperature and amount of daylight also affects the chameleon's colors. Chameleon had a strange, scaly bump on his nose. Andy wondered, Andy wondered, had he found a new species of chameleon? He took a photo of the species and brought it to the scientist who studies lizards. The lizards expert knew right away. It was a new kind of chameleon. Andy was thrilled. He felt lucky that he was surprised by the snake. But luck wasn't the whole story. It helped Andy, that was a very good observer. He noticed that the bumps on the animal's nose, and that helped Andy knew that it was so much about the forest. He remembered the other chameleons he had seen there before. He noticed exactly what was different about this one. A few months after Andy found the chameleon, he found another one just like it. It's neighboring on a neighboring mountain. He snapped the photograph seconds before it dropped off his fingers and disappeared forever. The new chameleon was called Mangambera chameleon. Andy was very happy to find very happy about that. Mangambera is the name of the forest he was trying to protect. The forest is in danger because people are cutting down the trees. Andy hopes that this bumpy-nosed chameleon will help more people find out about the forest. He hopes that people will want to protect the chameleon's home by not cutting down the tree. The flower hiding in a flower. Lou Jost rhymes with toast. Lou Jost lives high in the mountains in Ecuador, South America. He is a botanist. He studies plants, not just any plants. Lou is an orchid hunter. Orchids have flowers with unusual three-petaled shapes. So Ecuador. It's called Ecuador because it's on the equator. I'm going to sneeze, sorry. Excuse me. Lou spends a week every year hiking and camping in the mountains. He looks for the orchids a scientists had never seen before. He discovered 60 new orchids. He found most of them in the forest, but he found one by accident, right inside his house. Lou sometimes brings orchids back from the mountains to grow in pots at home. That way he can study them. One day he was checking one of the orchids when he noticed a tiny speck on the roots. It looked like a very tiny leaf. Lou grabbed his magnifying glass and took a closer look. What he saw took his breath away. So you can see there's Lou. Lou examines an orchid that he thinks might be a new species. It was fully formed orchid, not just a little wider than the tip of a pen. It was like something out of a miniature fairy world. Lou thought it might be a new species. He sent a photo of the tiny plant to a scientist who keeps track of orchids. The scientist agreed. He thought it might be the tiniest orchid in the world. Lou was lucky that his orchid was hitched a ride to his house. It would have been almost impossible to find it in a forest. But the discovery took more than luck. It took a special way of looking at nature. Most people would not have noticed the tiny plant growing on the root. So here's the real size. You see it right there? That's how small it is. So about 2 millimeters wide. That's how small that is. So there's a ruler. There's a millimeter. This picture shows the orchid at 25 times. So this is 25 times the real size. Lou started looking at nature when he was young. I spent all my free time walking the forest, he said, but his real training came later. Lou has spent more than 15 years looking at orchids. This taught his brain and eyes what to look for. Curiosity helps too. That's what made Lou decide to explore a mountain that no other plant scientist had visited. His curiosity paid off with a very tiny plant. Lou hopes this tiny plant will survive. He helped create and preserve the mountains where he found it. Now this plant and other plants like it is protected, or are protected. Lou discovered one of the world's tiniest orchids in the mountains of Ecuador. The bee on the way to work. Jason Gibbs loves bees. He grew up around them. His father raises honeybees. Today, Jason works with bees himself. He is an insect scientist. He studies sweat bees. Sweat bees live all over the world. In fact, you probably have some in your backyard. But scientists still don't know how many different species of sweat bees there are. That is because they are very hard to tell the difference between sweat bees apart. To the naked eye, they all look the same, explains Jason, and that is why he uses a microscope to study them. There's Jason Gibbs studying sweat bees. Why sweat bee? This bee got its name because it likes to be near human sweat. So some of you guys have already known that. Some of you maybe experienced a sweat bee getting to you and maybe stinging / biting you. Definitely an uncomfortable experience. A microscope makes the tiny things look bigger. It lets Jason see different color and the head of the shape and even faces of different bees. Jason's very good at remembering these tiny differences. That has helped him find 19 new species of sweat bees, including the one that found while he was walking on the subway. Jason was on his way to the university when he worked in Toronto, Canada, when he saw a sweat bee on a flower. He didn't think anything about it. He decided to scoop it up and bring it to work. Jason doesn't worry about getting stung because sweat bees don't sting a lot, and when they do, it doesn't bother him. He's tougher than me. I cry like a little baby if I'm ever stung. At work, Jason looked at the sweat bee under a microscope. Then it jumped up and did a little dance. He found a new species on his way to work. Jason was amazed that he found this bee on a street with other insects, where other insect scientists had walked many times before. He thinks the difference was all the hours he spent staring at the bees under a microscope. After 5 years, he finally memorized the bees' faces and shapes, and that's when he knew that what new bee was different. Thanks to his sharp eye and some luck, Jason discovered something that no one knew before about the ecosystem was in his own backyard. This is only one of 19 species of sweat bees discovered by Jason. Conclusion. Scientists find new species almost by accident when they're not really looking, but luck alone is never enough. It takes curiosity to being a good observer and knowing enough about the plant and animal to realize you have found something new. The moment you discover, the discovery is very exciting. It's the moment of uncovering something about the world that nobody else knew before. And the more we know about the world, the more we understand and how to protect it. Acknowledgement. The writer would like to acknowledge Andy Marshall, Lou Jost, Jason Gibbs for taking their time to describe the research and how it happened to find a species described in his book. Their first-hand accounts help provide an accurate glimpse into the work that scientists do every day. What a great one to end on. I like that one. So, we did our first reading. This morning you also received your missing work. It's very important that we get all your missing work done and turned in. This upcoming week is the last week of school. Make sure you get your missing work turned in. You need those points in the grades. I'll accept any work from the beginning of the quarter until now. So make sure that you're looking at that, you're finding your student ID number, and you're finding out what assignments you're missing. Today, I want you to give me 20 minutes of Lexia. So 20 minutes of Lexia on your own. Next scoop pad. You should have 50. Should have 50 ELA scoop pad points. 50 ELA scoop pad points. I am not assigning any more scoop pad next week. So make sure to make this your last one and everyone reach their goal of getting 50 scoop pad points. Now let's jump into our using references, materials, and quiz. So let's jump into language arts right here. And I go click here. And then we'll go into language arts. Reading. We open up reading, and we look for the one that's due today, and that is the 21st. If it lets me scroll. Sometimes it takes forever to let me scroll. It's real laggy when I first get into it. There it is. Using references. I need to undo that one. Using references. Look it up! A dictionary can be actually one of the most important resources. The skill of using a dictionary to look up words if you don't know or can't pronounce will help you with your research. As you find out more about the topic, you should expect to come across some words you aren't familiar with. I still do that all the time at my age. If some of those words show up often enough, you'll need to look them up and learn what it means. Otherwise, you might not understand what you're reading about in the topic. Below is an example of how this works. Take a look at this paragraph from a polar explorer's account on his team's attempt to reach the North Pole. Which words from this passage seems important, but might be unfamiliar to some readers? For the first 24 hours after we entered the ice, it was so loose that we were able to hold our course and keep up with our speed for practically the whole time. On the following 2 days, things did not go quite as smoothly. At times, the lines of flows were fairly close, and occasionally we had to go around. However, there was always openings for us to enable us to keep going. In the course of January 6th, a change took place. Flows became narrower. For me, it's got to be this word, flows. I'm not sure exactly what flows even means. Which words is unfamiliar? I'm going to say flows. Which readers don't know what flows is. It appears in the passage twice. Important to understand what exactly is a flow, F-L-O-E-S. So this dictionary is a good place to find a definition. We're going to watch this video to learn about more how to use a dictionary to help you out.
When you're reading or researching a topic, you may encounter unfamiliar words. The dictionary is a good place to find the meanings or definitions of these words. When you look up a word in the dictionary, you can learn the pronunciation and meaning of the word. You can find out whether it's a noun or verb or some other part of speech. You can also learn the word's origin, or the language that the word originally comes from. While you're watching this story about the mummies of ancient Egypt, listen for unfamiliar words. A mummy is a body of a person or animal that has been preserved for many years. The word mummies often refers to the ancient burials in Egypt. Egyptians wrapped the mummies in linen and painted them with natural resins or a tar-like substance. Researching a mummy reveals clues to that person's life and culture. Clothing and tattoos show how the people looked and what kinds of materials were used for clothing. Stomach contents show what they ate. These clues reveal the status or class of the person, or show what the person did for a living. Although many people and even some animals were mummified, those that were most carefully protected were pharaohs, or kings in ancient Egypt. Only one pharaoh's tomb has been discovered intact, that of Tutankhamun, known today as King Tut. Scientists know from studying Tut's mummy that he was probably around 18 years old when he died. The mummy of Tutankhamun was kept in a solid gold sarcophagus. His tomb was also filled with paintings, furniture, weapons, games, and other artifacts that give us a glimpse into the life of an ancient pharaoh. Now that we have learned about mummies in ancient Egypt, let's take a closer look at the unfamiliar words that were heard and look them up in the dictionary. The report said that the mummy of Tutankhamun was found in a golden sarcophagus. First, let's find out how to pronounce that word. It's pronounced sarcophagus. Now, let's find out what sarcophagus means. A sarcophagus is a stone coffin decorated with a sculpture or inscriptions. That means that the mummy of Tutankhamun was found in a coffin. Because he was king, his was made of gold. Let's find out what else we can learn about this word. Next to the word sarcophagus is a lowercase n. In some dictionaries, the part of speech is labeled with one letter. The n indicates that the word sarcophagus is a noun. There are two correct plural forms of sarcophagus: sarcophagi and sarcophaguses. So if there are two of them, it would be correct to say either two sarcophagi or two sarcophaguses. Below the definition, you'll find the origin. The origin of sarcophagus is Greek. The abbreviation SYN stands for synonym. So, another word for sarcophagus is coffin. When you look up a word in the dictionary, you can learn the pronunciation and meaning of a word, the word's part of speech, and its origin. Look up this word in the dictionary. H-I-E-R-O GLYPHICS. Find out how to pronounce the word and what the word means. Also, find out what part of speech it is and what language it originates from.
Alrighty. Let's see here. Connecting. The mummy of King Tutankhamun, or King Tut, was discovered in a burial chamber in the Valley of the Kings. A sarcophagus held his mummy. If you were to look up the word sarcophagus in the dictionary, what would it tell you? Well, we just saw it. Right there. It's a coffin. Basically, it's what it means is a coffin. One thing I learned from watching this, you can say sarcophagus, and sarcophagi. I always thought it'd be sarcophagi rather than sarcophaguses. If that makes sense what I'm saying there. I didn't know that would be the plural version of that. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and scoot on over to the next slide there, please. The main points. So, basically, we're going to find out what these words provide. What information do guide words provide? What information do they provide us? So, they tell us words are missing from the page. They tell you the first and last words. So, the guide words information. No! Darn it! I'm going to go to this bottom one. They tell you the first and last words on the page. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button there. Let's go on over to, I hit the wrong button again. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. We know we done that one. That's the next one. Okay. What is the purpose of the dots that appear between the word parts? To show syllables in the word, to show you what the word looks like as two words. Show you some syllables. Remember, every time you go like this, you say your name like Adam. Anytime your jaw goes down, that is a syllable. So like chip, pot, like 3 syllables. Burrito, 3 syllables. Corn, 1 word. Beans, 1 syllable. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Guacamole, 4 syllables. So that's what the dots are there for. What does the order of possible definitions tell you about the word? Which definitions are more common? Which definitions are historically the oldest? Definitely the ones that are more common. The common ones are on the top. What information does a thesaurus tell you? The context which the word is most often used, a list of related and similar words. A thesaurus gives you some similar words like synonyms, similar. The entries in a thesaurus are organized differently than entries of a dictionary. How so? They are different because words in a thesaurus are organized by a theme. Words in a thesaurus are organized alphabetically. Darn it, did it again. Alphabetically. Just like a dictionary, alphabetically. We don't need that assignment because we already have an assignment we're doing this week. Spell check. You can also use the spell check feature of the word processing program. We use it all the time. If you use your computer to do your writing, you can click the spell check button that you see you made any mistakes. A lot of times it'll be red. When you ask your computer to help to correct your work with spell check, it reads through every word that you have written and checks to see if the word's in its dictionary. So in its dictionary. So it may not be in its dictionary. So some of you guys might have some names that always show up as red underlined because it's not in the dictionary that the computer is using. If it isn't, it shows you a dialog box where you can choose to accept or reject a spelling. Spell check is a useful tool, but it definitely has limitations. Here is the quiz. That's not it, sorry. Here is the quiz. Using references, materials quiz. That is a 4-question quiz. All right, what's next is our mini mystery science number 30. This is our very last mini mystery science. I really like mystery sciences. I usually do the full ones that we do in class, in person, but sometimes we can't do those when we're doing online things. So let's go to discussion board post. I'll move my face over here now, and we'll go over to discussions. And our discussions, is number 30. It's the very last one. So, what you're going to do is you're going to watch the mini mystery science link, and then you're going to answer these questions in discussion board post. How do batteries even work? Number 2, which of your electronic devices wear batteries out the fastest? Why do you think that is? You guys have computers, you guys have phones, some of you guys even have some watches. Which one of your devices runs out of the battery the fastest? And for the last one, for the bonus box, what is the most amazing thing to involve electricity? What do you think? So let me get this set up for you. Batteries!
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Waylon.
I have a question for you. How do batteries work?
That's a great question. Before I say anything more, I'm curious. How do you think batteries work?
Alrighty, so go ahead and answer this question in your discussion board post before we get started, because it's always fun to kind of find out what we know before we start and then see how learning changes that.
Well, believe it or not, the answer to this question involves a story about frog legs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you heard me right. Frog legs. Now, some people prepare and eat the legs of frogs, just like some people eat chicken legs. But one scientist by the last name of Galvani had a dead frog in his laboratory one day. Not because he was going to eat it, but because he was getting ready to study it. Galvani was really interested in figuring out how people's bodies work, things like muscles and organs. At that time, this was a few hundred years ago, nobody knew yet how exactly people or animals move their muscles. It's hard to see how muscles work from the outside of an animal's body, so it can help to look inside. If an animal dies, scientists can do an operation, like a doctor. This is what's called a dissection. So Galvani had prepared the frog's legs so that he could dissect them and study the muscles. Because he didn't want the frog's legs to rot, he had soaked them in some salt water overnight. He got one out, put it in his dissection pan, and then, as he started to cut it with his scalpel, something amazing happened. The leg suddenly began to twitch and jump. Now, obviously, this was extremely surprising. The frog, after all, was dead. Its legs shouldn't have been able to move. Galvani got so excited. He felt that he had discovered some kind of special power within frogs' muscles. He thought he must be so close to unlocking the secret of how animals move their muscles. Well, news of Galvani's discovery spread fast among all the scientists living at that time. Lots of them were excited to see if they could unlock the secret of how animals move. One of those scientists, a scientist by the last name of Volta, found something even more surprising than Galvani. As Volta tried to repeat Galvani's experiments, he became convinced that the twitching of the frog's leg actually had almost nothing to do with the frog and everything to do with the metal tools that Galvani was using. For example, Volta found out that in one of Galvani's experiments, the frog's leg would only twitch when it was being touched by two different metals. You see, Galvani had used a tool containing the metal copper to hold the frog's leg in place. And Galvani's knife was made of a different kind of metal, a metal containing iron. Volta wondered, what if this special power that Galvani discovered was actually something contained not in frogs' muscles, but in the two different metals? Using no frog legs at all, Volta took two pieces of metal, one of copper and one of iron, just like the metals used in Galvani's experiment. Then, he connected a piece of wire to each metal disc. When he touched the two wires together, well, at first, nothing happened. But that's when Volta remembered there was one other substance involved in Galvani's frog leg experiments: salt water. Volta added a little disc of cardboard soaked in salt water between the pieces of metal. Suddenly, now when he connected these together, he could feel a slight shock. By stacking up little sandwiches of each metal, separated by discs of salt water soaked cardboard, Volta discovered that he could increase the strength of the shock. With enough of these little discs all piled up, he could even create a spark.
Oh.
It looked just like he was making a little lightning bolt. What Volta had
Isn't that
just
crazy?
invented was the very first battery.
Hey, I do want to tell you guys stop right here. Look at his name, Volta. Have you ever heard the word volt before? I wonder where the name Volt came from.
In fact, to this day, in some languages, like in French, a battery still goes by the name of Volta's pile. At the time that the battery was invented, Volta and others didn't actually know what kinds of things they'd be useful for. No one had invented anything powered by electricity yet. But over time, as you can guess, that all changed. Today, batteries are one of the most useful inventions ever. Since batteries are a portable form of electricity, they allow us to power things without having to be anywhere near an electrical outlet. Without batteries, we'd have no ability to use smartphones, electric cars, not even flashlights. Today's batteries may look different from the first battery ever invented, although some look incredibly similar on the inside. Either way, all batteries still work the same basic way. They all use Volta's amazing discovery that when you sandwich together two different metals between some kind of liquidy solution, like salt water or acid, electricity is produced. That's all for this week's question. Thanks, Waylon, for asking it. The world is filled with incredible wonders. Before you vote on next week's question, we put together some amazing things about electricity that we'd love to show you. Take a look inside, or if you don't have time, that's okay. You can skip straight to voting. Number 5.
I know why. Aha! Pretty neat, huh? Uh-oh, here comes another one. Might want to shut off that electricity. Woo! Woo!
Number 4.
Thor's coming! It's Thor! Reminds me of a scene in Avengers. When he comes back. They had that cool song. Oh! That's cool. Good thing those guys weren't standing there. That's why it starts thundering lightning when you're golfing. You gotta get off the course.
Number 3.
So artist about to zap a piece of wood electricity. Never try it yourself, obviously. Yeah, it's super dangerous, guys. Don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, it's super cool. Almost looks like lava. Wow! Like a tree. Wow.
Number 2.
Nope. Nope. Get away from those. Uh-uh. Uh-uh. I ain't messing with those. No way. Don't do it, dude! What are you doing? Oh, that's a robot arm. Oh, I was gonna say. Dude, look at that thing just straight trying to murder that human. No, thank you, man. Oh, that's going to give me the heebie-jeebies. Look at that thing. It's like, I want to kill that human so bad I'm going to electrocute it. No thanks.
And now, the last one.
Yeah, right there. Pretend. We're not really going to do that. What's this guy doing? This is technically what's called a Tesla coil. This guy is what we call an idiot. No, I'm just kidding. That is cool. That is cool. I will give him that. No way I would do it, but it is cool. Alrighty. So that takes us
for the
to,
next episode.
our next assignment, which is going to be science, nutrients. Nutrients. This is all what your plants are looking for right now. For those of you guys that have started gardens, your plants are looking for those nutrients. It's warm enough. Make sure you give them enough water, and your plants are gonna be grow really fast. Maybe get a lot of tomatoes this summer. Maybe some basil too, cilantro. Your plants should be growing, or whatever you're growing right now. They should start growing here really, really soon because it's nice and warm out. We roll on down to nutrients. There it is. Nutrients. How do plants get their nutrients? Well, we'll watch this video and we'll find out. Make sure we're not... Okay, there we go.
But what do plants need?
Plants need soil, water, and sunlight.
That's right. Plants make their food through photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. The substance in leaves that makes a plant green is called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll takes in or absorbs light from the sun and turns it into food for the plant. The plant roots reach down into the soil and pull up water into the plant. Along with the water come the things in soil that plants need. These are called nutrients. They are spread through the plant by special passages called veins. All living animals breathe in oxygen and exhale out a gas called carbon dioxide. Plants need that carbon dioxide to make food. Carbon dioxide from the air enters the plant through the small openings in the undersides of its leaves. These are called the stomata. As the plant makes food, pure oxygen is released from the plant as waste. Plants provide clean, recycled air for all.
All right. Let me get myself connected. What do plants need? Duh, it's the highlight of our lesson today. They need soil, water, sunlight. Plants make their own food through photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. If I hit this button. Plant nutrients. What are they? There are 16 chemical elements known to be important to a plant's growth and survival. They're divided into two main groups, non-mineral and mineral groups. The non-mineral plants include nutrients, include hydrogen, H, oxygen, O, carbon, C, which are found in air and water. Carbon and oxygen make up carbon dioxide, which is the essential ingredient for photosynthesis. As shown in the image below, this is nature's contribution to plant life. There's also little we can do to control how much of these nutrients are used by plants. In goes water, in goes carbon dioxide, in goes sunlight, and out comes oxygen as waste. Thankfully, it's a waste product for them because we breathe that in, and we breathe out carbon dioxide that goes into the plants. There are 13 nutrients from the soil that are absorbed through plants' roots. Gardeners and farmers can add nutrients from fertilizer or compost to make plants healthier. Mineral nutrients divided into two groups. Macronutrients, Macro, large. Micro, small. Small nutrients. The macro derives the word from the meaning large. Micro from the meaning small, tiny. Macronutrients are needed in larger doses than micronutrients, which are needed in very small doses. One way to add these nutrients to the growing plants is to recycle grass clippings and tree leaves to tree leaves. The chart below shows nutrients found in each of these two. So you can see some of the macronutrients that need a lot of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. If you look a lot in fertilizer bags, at Lowe's or Home Depot, wherever you go, you'll see a lot of these in there. Nitrogen levels, all this is very important. And micronutrients, you need these in smaller doses. Hit that next button. Am I connected? Yeah, I'm connected. Okay, there are 16 chemicals known to be important to plants' growth. They're divided into two groups: micro, macro, or oops, mineral, non-mineral. I got excited. Sorry. This one coming up here: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. Those are the nutrients that all plants need. And what's the difference between micro and macro? So I got excited ahead of myself for the micro and macro. Macronutrients, you need a large of them. Micronutrients, you need less of them, or smaller amounts. Now that takes you to the quiz. Sorry about that. Nutrients quiz. There it is, your last science nutrients quiz of the year. Ooh. Make sure you get it done. All right, this takes us to our afternoon lesson. I don't know why this is cutting off this right here. Aha, there you go. Stretch the page out slowly. Let's go to page number 2. And we got right here, we have math, writing and ratios, brain pop, the Holocaust, scoop pad, and math 50-point scoop pad. So let's start off with, let's do the math one. I'm feeling like I want to do a final math lesson for the year. Obviously not doing social studies because we've been doing the geography and constitution projects over this past week and a half. So that's what's taken place with that. And Rose and her dad's presentation that they gave us. There's math. Math. Just math. Open up math. Okay. Alrighty. I know. It's scrolling. There it is. Writing ratios. Last math lesson of the year. What is a ratio? Today's lesson discuss a few different things to compare numbers. Carla worked at a pizza shop. On Monday, she noticed that every time they sold 7 cheese pizzas, they sold 3 pepperoni pizzas and 2 mushroom pizzas. If they sold 28 cheese pizzas, how many pepperoni pizzas were sold? How many mushroom pizzas were sold? Ooh, making me hungry. Let's learn about ratios in the lesson. You'll discover how to find out the answers to questions like that. Ratios. So watch this lesson about ratios and do a little bit more about bears. What? Bears? Yes.
The cold Arctic region is home to the largest land carnivore on Earth, the great white polar bear. All carnivores have claws and special cheek teeth for slicing tough foods. But no other carnivore today is quite as hefty as the polar bear.
That's a big polar bear.
Male polar bears can weigh 1,500 pounds or more, and females as much as 700 pounds. The number of male polar bears tends to be about the same as the number of female polar bears in the population. These characteristics can be expressed as ratios. That's one number in relation to another. One way to write a ratio is to use a colon to separate the two numbers we're comparing. For example, equal numbers of male polar bears, M, and female polar bears, F, can be expressed like this. Males to females, M to F, equals 1 to 1. This ratio doesn't mean that we have only one male and one female polar bear in the population. Rather, it indicates that there is one male for every one female in their population. Did you know that all bears belong to one big family? Scientifically defined, that is. Polar bears belong to a subgroup that also includes black bears, brown bears, sloth bears, and sun bears. Spectacled bears are considered by some scientists to form a subgroup of their own. And so do the giant pandas. So altogether, 7 types of bears can be considered to be in the overarching bear family. We can represent each of the subgroups with a shape. A circle for the first subgroup, a square for the second, and a triangle for the third. We can express the relationships between the numbers of types of bears in the different subgroups using ratios. There are 5 circles, 1 square, and 1 triangle. That means the ratio of circles to squares is 5 to 1. And the ratio of circles to triangles is also 5 to 1. The ratio of squares to triangles is 1 to 1. Whether we represent them using shapes or numbers, the ratios for the numbers of types of bears in the different subgroups stay the same.
Alrighty. So, we're going to watch this video to learn 3 different ways to express ratio. This time, Miss Dixon is going to be our teacher.
Hi, this is Dixon, and we're going to learn how to express ratios in 3 different ways. First way we're going to do is to use a colon. For instance, the ratio 3 to 5 is written as 3:5, and it's always read with a 2, 3 to 5. The next way is to use the word 2, just like we say it. So we write and say the same thing, which is 3 to 5 as an example. And the last one, we're going to use a fraction bar. A fraction is a kind of ratio. So to use a fraction bar, you write 3 to 5. Let's look at some examples. Let's think of 3 ways to write the ratio of the number of blue boxes to the number of yellow boxes in this picture. So we always start with blue because blue is listed first in in the sentence ratio of blue to yellow. So the number of blue boxes is 4. The number of yellow boxes, which is second, is 3. So our ratio is 4 to 3. A second way to write it is 4 to 3. And the third way is to use the fraction bar, 4 to 3. All 3 of these ways, when I read them out loud, I say 4 to 3. Next, I want to write the ratio of all the boxes to green. All boxes is first in the sentence, so I'm going to start with the number of all the boxes, and there's a total of 9 boxes, so that's the first number in the ratio. Then I'll use my colon for my first way, and the number of green boxes is 2. So I have a ratio of 9 to 2 boxes to green boxes. The second way to write it is to use the word 2. So number of all boxes is 9. 2, the number of green boxes, 2. 9 to 2. And the third way is to use a fraction bar. The number of all boxes goes in the numerator, and the number of green boxes, the second thing, goes in the denominator. Whoops, 9 to 2. So for all 3 of these, I read it as 9 to 2, but there's 3 different ways to write it. Notice I use the first thing in the sentence is the first thing in the ratio. So, to express ratios, it's 3 different ways. You always use the word 2 when you read it, but to write it, you can use a colon, the word 2, or a fraction bar. So have fun expressing ratios.
Thanks, Miss Dixon. So, write a ratio. Let me get myself connected. Ratios compare the number of items in a particular group, like the number of subspecies of a bear in one group compared to another. You learned that one way to write a ratio is with a colon. There are other ways to write ratios as well. Let's think about the pizza question as we look at the 3 ways to write ratios. For every 7 cheese pizzas, the pizza shop sold 3 pepperoni pizzas and 2 mushroom pizzas. So let's compare 7 cheese pizzas, 3 pepperoni pizzas by writing a ratio. 7 to 3. 7 semicolon 3 or 7 over 3. When you compare the 7 cheese pizzas to the mushroom pizzas, you can write the ratio 7 to 2, 7 semicolon to 2, or 7 over 2. So what do you think, what do you notice about the ways at writing a ratio? We're going to click the picture of Jan to see what she noticed. Even though the ratios are different ways, 7 comes first in all three. It's probably because the cheese pizzas were mentioned first in the phrase, compare the cheese pizzas versus 3 pepperoni pizzas. You're right, Jan. Thank you. Before practice writing ratios, we're going to watch one more video to learn about how to write them as fractions.
A ratio is a relationship between quantities.
This relationship can be expressed in a number of ways. Like fractions, ratios tell you how much you got in comparison to the whole.
We're going to do a ratio. There's 11 cups of coffee here. 5 are regular strength coffee, 4 are espressos, and 2 are cappuccinos. And they're all for me.
You put these into a ratio. You put numbers into a ratio by placing the colons between the amounts present, like the coffee, espresso, or cappuccino.
There are a total of 11 cups, so the ratio is 5 parts regular coffee, 4 parts espresso, and 2 parts cappuccino. We just stick in colons between each of these parts. This means that the ratio of regular coffee to espresso to cappuccino is 5 to 4 to 2.
Notice that there are a total of 11 cups. The 11 represents the whole in this case.
If we looked at this ratio in terms of fractions, then 11 would be the denominator, since it represents the whole, and the numerator would be either the 5 coffees or 4 espressos or 2 cappuccinos. So, the regular coffee represents 5/11ths of the total cups. 4/11ths of the total is represented by the espresso, and 2/11ths of the whole is cappuccino.
We'll do one more example of ratios.
Was completely and utterly decimated by the power of the volcano.
In a recent poll, 27 students liked the idea of having 2 jiu-jitsu masters engage in combat while their professor lectured.
While 28 students preferred the less violent game of handball.
So, there are 55 students in all, because 27 students plus 28 students equals 55 students.
So, out of a class of 55 students, we have that 27 prefer jiu-jitsu masters as classroom entertainment. The fraction is 27 over 55, or 27 55ths. The numerator, 27, is the part of the whole, or the amount of students out of all those sampled that like jiu-jitsu. And 28 out of 55 students are for handball. And this fraction is 28 over 55, or 28 55ths. So 28 out of 55 students preferred handball. It's that easy.
Alrighty. And let's jump to our next one. So we can practice writing some ratios. Say you count the number of motorized vehicles in the parking lot. 3 motorcycles, 42 cars, and 18 trucks. Now we know how to write ratios in 3 ways. Try answering the following questions. So, what are the ratio of cars to trucks? Okay, so you got to count them all up, and you put how many cars there are to trucks. There are 42 cars to 18 trucks. So trucks to motorcycles. So there are 18 trucks to 3 motorcycles. 18 to 3. The ratio of motorcycles to total vehicles, I think is 3 here plus the 18, 42 plus 18. So there you go. You have plus the 3 is 63. So we know that 42 over 18 is the same thing as 21 over 9 or 7 over 3, and 18 over 3 is the same thing as 6 over 1. This is called equivalent fractions. It's like reducing a fraction. Equivalent ratios. You got me saying fractions. So this is it. This is your last math quiz of 5th grade year. So congratulations, you made it. You made it. Alrighty. Now let's go to our final thing, which is going to be our brain pop. Our brain pop video is called The Holocaust. Let's go ahead and watch this. This is a sad one, but it's important that we know that we are aware of our history, so that way we do not repeat the things that happened in our history.
It's a memorial for the people who died in the Holocaust. Dear Tim and Moby, how did the Holocaust happen? From Dora. The Holocaust was the systematic murder of 6 million Jews during World War II. It seems impossible to imagine how human beings could do such terrible things. But it didn't just happen out of the blue. The path to genocide began years before the killing started. Genocide is when one group of people tries to wipe out another group because of who they are. In the Holocaust, the Nazis were trying to eliminate all Jews. The Nazis were a German political party whose leader was Adolf Hitler. In the 1920s and 30s, they rose to power by promising to restore Germany to its former glory. The country had suffered a humiliating defeat in World War I. Then, in 1929, the Great Depression, a global economic collapse, dealt the Germans another blow. Formerly a world power, Germany was on the verge of total collapse. Hitler and the Nazis insisted that the nation could regain its greatness. They said true Germans were part of a superior race, which was destined to rule the world. They just had to destroy the enemy secretly undermining them from within. That enemy, according to the Nazis, was the Jews. This anti-Semitism, racism against Jews, fueled the Nazis' rise to power. Anti-Semitism has a long history in Europe. Going back to the Middle Ages, Jews were viewed with suspicion for not following Christianity. Their differences made them targets of prejudice and violence. By the 20th century, most people thought that Europe had left that past behind, especially Germany. It was a center of modern thought and culture. The Nazis stirred up old prejudices with anti-Semitic propaganda, using newspapers, movies, and other mass media to push a particular message. They depicted Jews as rats or insects, blood-sucking enemies weakening Germany. The goal was to convince German citizens to turn on their neighbors, and it worked. In the 1932 election, the Nazi Party won a third of the seats in parliament. Within a year, Adolf Hitler was appointed the leader of Germany. 1 month later, someone burned down the Reichstag, the German parliament building. No one really knows who set the fire, but Hitler used it to seize more power. He blamed his party's political opponents and had them arrested. Citing national security, Hitler abolished freedom of speech, protest, and the press. He became the country's dictator, or absolute ruler. His personal security force, the Schutzstaffel, or SS, became the country's national police. They built large outdoor prisons called concentration camps because they concentrated large groups of people in one place. These were used to jail political enemies of the Nazi Party. Meanwhile, Hitler's regime began stripping Jewish citizens of their civil rights. Jews were banned from serving in the army and government and as doctors. Quotas, or limits, were placed on the number of Jewish students. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws defined German and Jew as different races. One law stated that only people of German blood could be citizens of Germany, and only citizens had political rights. The Roma Sinti, another ethnic minority, were targets of similar regulations. Other laws singled out gay people, communists, and the disabled. Anyone who didn't fit the Nazi idea of the master race. Jews were forced to wear yellow stars so people would know who to target. And citizens were encouraged to harass and attack them on the streets. On November 9, 1938, violence exploded in a wave of attacks. It looked like a riot had just suddenly happened. But we now know that it was secretly led by SS officers acting on specific orders. Many wore regular clothes to blend in with the crowd. Neighbors joined in to destroy Jewish-owned shops, burn synagogues, and murder 90 Jews. Another 30,000 were arrested and sent to concentration camps. It was called Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. Many Jews had already left Germany. After Kristallnacht, more and more tried to escape. They sought safety in other countries, at embassies, and at the borders. Most were turned away. The U.S. refused to change its laws to allow more European Jews to move here. Countries around the world expressed sympathy, but kept their doors closed. In May of 1939, a ship called the St. Louis arrived in Cuba. It carried 900 Jewish refugees from Germany, all with legal entry visas. But at the last minute, Cuba denied them entry. The U.S. turned them away too, and so did Canada. Captain Gustav Schroeder refused to return to Germany until his passengers found safe harbor. Eventually, they were divided among France, Britain, Belgium, and the Netherlands. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, touching off World War II. Within a year, most of Europe was under German control. This brought the fates of millions more Jews into the hands of the Nazis, including those who thought they had escaped, like the passengers from the St. Louis. Jews were stripped of their property and forced into ghettos, walled-off sections of cities. Conditions were extremely crowded, with little food and almost no medicine. From there, they were shipped off to a vast network of concentration camps. The Nazis now had hundreds of these prisons across Europe. Prisoners spent their days doing hard labor, and their nights crammed into unheated sheds. They died by the thousands from torture, disease, and starvation. Well, for the Nazis, none of this went far enough. So Hitler's administration devised a final solution: total extermination. Families were rounded up and shot by the thousands. And in late 1941, the Nazis began to build death camps with gas chambers. These were airtight rooms that were filled with deadly poisonous gas. Prisoners were told they were showers, but the shower heads poured gas, not water. By the end of the war, the Nazis had killed 6 million Jews, plus 5 million others. When the Allies won the war, the camps were liberated. Photographs of skeletal survivors, gas chambers, smokestacks, and piles of bodies shocked the world. People struggled to comprehend the scale of the Nazis' crimes. Party leaders were prosecuted at a special court in the German city of Nuremberg. Accusing them of murder didn't seem big enough to fit their crimes, so they were charged with a new category of offense: crimes against humanity. The newly formed United Nations took steps to prevent another Holocaust. Its countries agreed to work together to root out and punish genocide, and to welcome immigrants fleeing from violence. Tragically, genocides do still happen around the world, and governments rarely act in time to stop them. But as individuals, we can push our leaders to do something when we see the warning signs. When a society decides that only certain people belong and others are the enemy. When one group of people is labeled animals or a disease. When people are denied their rights and cut off from society. When they are victimized just because of who they are. We know where that can lead. And we all have a responsibility to stop it.
So, when you guys go to Dempsey in 8th grade, you guys will get the ability to visit the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. There's also Holocaust remembrance sites, even here in Columbus, certainly where I live here in Bexley, where there is a large Jewish population in and around the area, and there were many synagogues. And there's also plenty of Holocaust remembrance sites. It was a sad time in our history, but it's something that we need to be aware of, just in case we want to prevent things like this from happening again. And there are genocides going on right now as we speak, and in various countries throughout the world. So we as humans, we should hope to eliminate any of this from happening. Well, unfortunately, this kind of, ends our lesson here, and it's our very last one. Ends it on a sad note, I guess. But hopefully, you've had a great time with these videos. Make me a YouTube star, and I will see you guys all bright and early Monday morning.